Are you a guy who has or hasn't used exercise to support his mental health and self-confidence? This video today is only my personal opinion. We're not going into the science of why exercise makes you happier and less depressed or less anxious. Go listen to our Andrew Huberman podcast if you want to listen into that for more insights. I want to talk about my experience with exercise, what I see out there in the world right now, and why I disagree with exercise being the only tool that we can use for our mental health and building confidence as men. In my experience, I had the cliche history of using alcohol, drugs, cigarettes, porn, watching TV, binge watching TV, all these sorts of things as immediate terms of pleasure to distract myself from the reality that I wasn't feeling too good. I got very addicted to these sorts of things, which was kind of great because when it came to exercise, I got addicted to exercise, which meant I got reasonably fit and I got reasonably good results. However, there is a difference between using something and abusing something. There is a difference between being able to have a sense of balance and somewhat control over what we do with exercise, then have it control us or have it lead our decisions and not act out of logic at times and purely out of emotion. So in my experience, I can't argue with the fact that I'm quite happy that I've gotten fitter over time. I've built some strength, built some muscle, been reasonably lean at points too. However, there's been a lot of times that I've sacrificed my own mental health and I've based my self-worth and I allocated my sense of self-confidence to the fact that I was fit, that I was lean, that I was strong, that I could run reasonably fast. Now, this is the big problem. If you're a guy who has come out of a breakup, you've come from a history of drug abuse, alcohol abuse, the whole partying scene, whatever trauma that you've dealt with in your childhood, exercise is a wonderful place. It is a wonderful tool that we can use to help somewhat deal with these sort of things, to help us redirect our pathway in life, to give us a sense of purpose and to get that positive feedback that you are healthier, you are fitter, you are looking better. And these are things that can contribute to us building more self-confidence because we see we're competent in these different tasks. We're a better runner, we're a better lifter in the gym, we're a better fighter in the ring. We look better with our shirt off, whatever it may be. However, the problem that I face, and I believe a lot of guys out there are facing now, is the fact that they are basing their worth on the way they look or how strong they are in the gym or how fast they can run. And when that gets stripped away from you, and even though that never may be the case, you've got to ask yourself, what position are you going to be in then? What is your worth as a man then when all of that is taken away? We can see this in professional athletes who cop an injury that forces them to stop playing the sport that they were playing and they get depressed. They have all these issues with their mental health because their worth was based on that. So whilst we can use exercise as a tool for our health, fitness, and building our self-confidence and managing things like depression, anxiety, and other mental health challenges, we need to remember this is one piece of the puzzle. And what I see in the men's motivation space now is that we completely disregard any sort of trauma in the past, any emotions that we haven't dealt with, and we always just seem to push through. And whilst I 110% agree with someone like David Goggins who is telling you to push yourself, get out of your comfort zone, find out who you are when you're in the hurt locker, I do agree with this and I think you can lean into it and you can let that serve you. But if you're someone who has lent into that and you still feel like you're having issues with your mental health, do you just keep pushing? Do you just keep doing the same thing? And then again, what happens when you go get an injury and you haven't got that avenue? What do you do? What do you do when you're stuck? What do you do when you're stuck in a room with your thoughts? For a lot of us, that's a scary thought in itself, to not be able to do anything physically, not be able to go work on something that we need to for our business or in whatever our profession is. When we are stuck there by ourselves with no option but to sit there and deal with the thoughts that are going on in our head, the emotions that arise, but we can't actually understand what they are, how to properly feel them, how to articulate them, not only to ourselves but to someone else, and then also just how to kind of navigate that, recognize where it comes from. Why am I feeling angry? Is it because I've felt rejection? Is it because I feel incompetent? Why am I feeling sad? Why am I feeling depressed? What am I anxious about? Are these patterns that are regularly occurring in my life? And usually, even though it's a step in the positive direction, is my coping mechanism now to run away from these quite literally, or go lift in the gym, or go train for my sport, or go work really hard. A lot of the time we can still use exercise as a distraction from what's really going on inside, in our body, in our mind. So with all that has been said so far, how do we know when we're probably using exercise a little too much as a distraction as opposed to a tool to help us improve our health, fitness, and also our self-confidence, to be a bit more proud of who we are, how we feel, and how we look? So how this showed up in my life when I knew I was using exercise probably a little bit too much was just the simple things. When I'd set out tasks for myself to do, whether it was studying or in my business, or even just going to socialize, and my instant thought, my comfort zone, was just to go train in the gym, was just to go hit the heavy bag, was just to go for a run. And how this starts to impact you over time is not only the fact that your performance starts to plateau or drop off because you're constantly overtraining or at least not recovering enough, but mentally you've got so much effort and energy exerted into that you start to become a little bit more frustrated, a little bit less tolerant of other people around you. I've been grumpy plenty of times in my life just because I was pushing my training too hard because I was running away from other things, other responsibilities that I had to deal with. Now, if you can't relate to this from being someone who uses exercise for this, are you doing it with your work? Are you someone who's gaming a lot? Are you watching porn, drinking, doing drugs, eating heaps of food when you know that you're going overboard? All these addictive tendencies that actually pull us away from the work we should really be doing. To keep it simple, once you've watched this video, or if you have heard this sort of information or this perspective before, and you know it starts to hit a bit of a trigger for you, or an alarm bell rings and you know, I've used exercise a little too much. I didn't take the deload, I didn't take the rest day, I didn't want to take whatever responsibility I had for work or in my relationship. I was withdrawing from whatever it may have been, and I went and exercised as a block for the emotions or the stress that I was feeling. To the extent that you've started to take it overboard, where you actually felt like it wasn't so much you controlling that, but it was impulse that you were acting on. It wasn't necessarily a conscious decision that you had pre-planned, it was an emotional reaction. So if this is hitting the mark, if you're feeling like this is something that you've experienced in your past, how do you start to navigate this? How do you get out of it over time? One of the biggest things for me has simply been preventative measures. So something that helps me to manage stress and emotional reactions by simply doing it at the start of the day. And the two major things I do for this are 5 to 10, maybe 15 minutes of breath work in the morning. I've done various different exercises. The most recent one that I enjoyed, the most recent one I'm enjoying is some Wim Hof style breathing in the morning. And I follow that up with about half a page or a page of journaling. Depending on where I was at in the past, for instance, in my last breakup, I used a lot of journaling, just going through what went on in the relationship, how I was feeling at a time, what could I do to improve myself in future if I felt like I dropped the ball on things or moved out of alignment with my mission and who I thought I wanted to be as a man. I started to write these little things down. Most recently though, I've actually started doing a bit more gratitude journaling, and then also what I want to do purposefully in life. I want to connect with people, create deeper connections with people. I want to overcome challenges and help other people to do that. And I also want to inspire people to seek this route of self-development, especially for men, because I've been someone who's walked this path and I'm still on that journey now. So these are some of the things I start to write about. You can write about goal setting, you can put your action plans, the habits that you want to do down. One of my biggest tips of advice with this would be to be less rigid than you think you need to be. I start to notice over time it becomes a bit of a chore. What are my goals? What are my habits? What are 3 things I'm grateful for? Freestyle it a little bit more at times. This becomes even better when you can intercept an emotion or a stressful day, sitting down at the end of the day or at whatever point in the day that you can, writing down what you're feeling, what you actually feel. Don't feel like you have to analyze it straight away. If you're angry, write about what you're angry about, how angry you are. And then once you make those thoughts tangible, you can start to analyze, okay, where's this coming from? Where's this stemming from a bit more? And this is creating more self-awareness for you. And this is going to do some of the work that exercise just can't. Don't get me wrong, I've had some pretty profound thoughts at the end of a long run or during a long run when you're out there on your own, listening to nothing, or maybe listening to a podcast and you start to have some ideas or notice some things about yourself, notice some things that actually came up in your past a little bit, and you have a better perspective on it. However, I think using writing and journaling as a tool, and using breathwork as something to help you self-regulate and put you in a more observational state, as well as helping you to deal with your own mental health, your own stress, your own reactivity. These are two potent tools that we can use with exercise to start to better manage our mental health. Not only that, but it's also going to help with your self-confidence, because you're gaining a better understanding of who you are, how you behave, and why you behave that way. So you can start to conduct yourself a little better. Sure enough, you can take action, but actually just have that moment to see where this all comes from. What you're probably going to find is that it is deep-seated into your upbringing, into your childhood. Whether or not you can remember those experiences and when they first showed their face in your life, that's another story. However, this is a really good place to start. So if you've made it this far through the video, let's just chat about why I'm actually discussing this in the first place. I think it's pretty obvious to see in this day and age that men's mental health is probably deteriorating. We are starting to gain more awareness around this. We're starting to open up the conversation a little bit more. But I think a lot of the talk out there in this men's self-development or men's motivation space is just to push, just to always kick into discomfort through physicality, through work, all that sort of stuff. And I think this is a large element of our own self-development as a man, but I also think there's going to be plenty of men out there that do this for 10, 20, 30 years and realize they're still in a rut, or something's going to come up in their life, and then they're finally going to be ready to work on this sort of stuff here, when they could have been doing it 10, 20, 30 years ago, started to clear up that space in their minds, started to create a bit more awareness in their lives. They could have started to connect to themselves and the people around them a lot more. And at the end of the day, what is the whole fucking point of pushing ourselves physically and in the work that we do? We all hear the stories about depressed millionaires and billionaires, but I am sure there is a lot of happy ones out there too. And I don't necessarily think it's a bad problem to have multiple figures in your bank account. But some of these stories just go to show that money, power, wealth, it's not always the answer. You becoming the best athlete that you can be, competing, getting a belt, getting the trophy or the medal, at the end of the day, when that's all said and done, you're probably going to care about that a lot more than anyone else does. What people are really going to remember is who you were to them. How did you impact their life? Could you support them? Could you create space for them? At the end of the day, as men, we need to strive to be the most successful man that we can be. But that doesn't always just mean through fitness, business, or profession. These things might actually be able to influence that man that you do become, but without doing the work on yourself and creating more sense of awareness and maybe even just contentment in your life, you're always going to feel like you're chasing a dragon that you'll never actually catch. So if you can take away anything from this video today, train hard, train smart, but also start to take into account that things like breath work and journaling are going to be those tools that help you to become the man that you want to be, because they're going to allow you to regulate your own mind well, make more impactful decisions in your life, and it's probably going to help you to stop and smell the roses, so to speak. It's going to create a deeper sense of connection, not only with yourself, but also with the people around you, which is probably going to give you a lot more fulfillment than a new PR in the gym or on your 10K run is ever going to. As always, I appreciate your support and your comments below. Feel free to drop a comment there, strike up a bit of a conversation, let me know your thoughts on this subject, if you've got any questions, or if you disagree with any of the things that I'm talking about. Now, if you are a man who wants to learn how to tie the training together with the nutrition, you want to learn about breathwork, journaling, using all these little tools that I talk about and integrating it into your life so you can become the best man that you can be, but you're also going to have a leaner, stronger, and more endurable body, feel free to apply for the Forge program in the link in the description below so you can start becoming the man that you aspire to be. Until next time, guys, see ya.